marriage and money. Well, those are two words that probably bring some thoughts to mind. And I have a special treat for you today. I have a guest who's an expert in this field. So she and I are going to be talking about some of the issues that come up with marriage and money. Let's go ahead and take a look at that interview right now. Joining me today is Judith Kaluzny. She is the author of the Marriage License Handbook, and she has a really interesting background. After 17 years of marriage, with 7 children, without a college degree, she went to law school. She then practiced family law for 43 years. She started out in divorce litigation and then moved into the practice of mediation. So needless to say, Judith knows a thing or two about marriage and money. Welcome to the show, Judith.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah, litigation was not problem solving, and I was basically a problem solver.
Judith, I want to ask you a few questions.
Yes.
When I was reading your book, I started thinking back to when I got married, and I was thinking to myself, I don't remember when I got married thinking that I was entering into a financial contract. I was in my 20s, and I remember at that time getting a car loan and going over every single detail. I always believed in reading everything before signing. I was taught that from my mother at a young age. But I didn't think of marriage that way. I thought of it as a moral contract, not a financial contract. And so I was wondering, why did I think that? Well, is it because I grew up poor and I also didn't have any money at the time I married, so I had nothing financially at stake, I felt? Or was it because I had a very religious background? And so what I'm wondering is, do you see that a lot? People thinking like me, like just not thinking of marriage as a financial contract? Or was I unusual in that way? What was your experience?
We didn't talk so much about not realizing it was a contract, but many people did not understand the difference between community and separate property. Now, your state law, the California law specifically has a statute to define marriage, and every state does. If you have any doubts, you just look at your state laws. And California defines marriage, it's a civil contract between two consenting adults. And that is the real essence of marriage. It's a contract and it's consenting. Consent is the essence of it. So, back in Rome, the only people who got married were the rich people because it was a financial deal with property. The poor people who didn't have anything didn't bother with marriage. So, because there was nothing to worry about acquiring.
Nothing to lose.
Right.
I have a few questions for you in checking in with my viewers, things that they're interested in hearing your thoughts on. And here's the first one. Sometimes when people are getting divorced, they are very stressed and so stressed out that they just want to walk away. And often I speak to people down the road who have done that and they have, some regrets about that. But in that moment, they're dealing with the stress and they just want to walk away. I wondered what your advice is for people who are in the midst of getting a divorce and just want to get out of the marriage and don't want to fight. What would you say to them, Judith?
Well, first thing I would say is the walk part's a good idea. Long walks. There's an old philosopher that in Latin said, solvitur ambulando. The problem is solved walking around. So take a long walk and then take a deep breath and then tell yourself, this is a business arrangement. This is a financial deal. That's what it is. It's business and nothing more. So you can talk about business.
Focus away from the emotional and get to what is at stake.
And I would also suggest, and I always did this with my mediation people, is that they would get a separate piece of paper to sit down and this privately, this item was not shared with the other spouse, to write down what you want most out of this negotiation. And secondly, write down what you think the other person wants most. And that way you're focused on what you need, what you think he or she needs. And that way you can calculate, okay, he really wants this, so I can give up that to get this for me. It's a negotiating tool. Write down what you want and think he wants, or she and he.
Yeah, it helps to take a long walk and write it down. It sounds like it helps to prioritize. So you're really thinking about what is important to you and what you're willing to give up.
Exactly. Exactly.
I have another question for you.
Yes.
Sometimes I talk with people who have been married or and divorced or widowed, generally a little older, and they meet someone, they may live together, and they say, I don't want to get married again for certain reasons. Maybe they had a bad experience in their first marriage, or maybe they're widowed and they're worried about mixing money. But I also wonder if are they giving something up by not getting married? Are there advantages or protections to being married, Judith?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is healthcare. If you're not married and your significant other ends up in the hospital, you have nothing to say about their care.
Mm.
And you're not qualified, you're not entitled to hear what's going on or how sick they are or what the treatment is. So that's one thing, except in one state that I know about because my daughter lived there, and it involved her getting hit by a car and being in a coma, and the coma center was in Texas. And she was a citizen of New Mexico. New Mexico law says if you are in a committed long term relationship, you are as qualified as an actual spouse to participate in healthcare. That's in their state law.
Okay.
So, and the other thing about is Social Security. If that's a concern to you, you're not entitled to the other person's Social Security. Well, let me explain. If you're married 10 years or more, you can collect Social Security on your spouse's account. It does not take anything away from the spouse, but you can collect a share that you're entitled to as this long-term married person. The thing is that I discovered when I reached age 65 is that you cannot collect on that married Social Security plus your own Social Security.
Right.
Yeah, I knew it intellectually when I went to apply, but emotionally, what hit me was my government thinks those 17 years of homemaking and child raising were worthless.
Mm.
Fortunately, I had a very good Social Security worker. She said, well, listen, if you're going to keep on working, and you want to put off collecting till you're in your 70s, why don't you just collect on his now? And then you can collect on your own when the time comes, which is what I did.
Very
And
nice.
that was a very good suggestion. And I really think of Social Security workers fondly. They're very helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like you got someone who gave you really good advice so that you didn't lose out on that. Like you said, the fact that you had to make those sacrifices and you gave up probably your own career at that time to raise the children. And so why shouldn't you be able to collect on that?
Exactly.
Well, we're going to wrap up here in a moment, Judith. But before we go, I just want to ask you, is there anything else that, I mean, you have many things obviously you could share, but anything critical that you would give as advice to people who are going to enter a marriage, whether it's, and you may have two different things for this, whether it's somebody young starting out, getting married for the first time, or whether it's somebody getting married the second or third or fourth time. Is there any advice that you want to share with people of what to do to make sure that they are looking out for the financial aspects?
That's right. Each state has a financial aspect to their marriage contract rules, and the state has a contract for you. In California, it's everything that you acquire from your own work during marriage is community property. So if you don't write your own contract, you can write your own contract to change that. And you can write that contract before or during marriage. I had a client that wanted to have her own business that started after she'd been married for 10 years. She could do that as separate property with a written agreement between her and her husband. So if you don't like the state's contract, you can write your own.
And I
Before
don't think a
or
lot of people know that.
right, I think not. And if you do have a premarital contract and it's not working out the way you thought, you can change it during marriage. All you need is the two of you have an agreement that's clear as to what your intentions are. You both sign it and date it. You don't need a lawyer to write it.
And I think that would probably surprise people. I think there's a perception that everything has to go through a lawyer when it comes to financial contracts in marriage.
No, a contract requires two consenting adults and a date, signatures and date.
That sounds pretty simple and straightforward.
Yes. So,
Well, Judith, I'm going to put your contact information underneath the video because I know that you do speaking as well as the writing that you do. So I want to say thank you for being here today. I sure appreciate your time. I appreciate all the valuable insights you have. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be checking out your website. They may want to buy a little copy of this marriage license handbook as a gift to people getting married in their lives. And so thank you for being here today.
well, you're welcome. I enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Judith and found it helpful. I know I definitely learned a lot. And I have a couple closing thoughts for you about relationships. Because one of the things I've observed is that despite the fact that we are so open about many, many things in our society, we can still be a bit closed when it comes to money. And that's okay if you're talking about the general public, but in your relationships, if you keep things about money hidden, that can cause problems. And so my hope for you as you walk away from this video today is that you'll think about being more open in your romantic relationships about money, because that can prevent a lot of problems down the road. So thanks for being here today. Thanks for spending time with me.